and welcome to today's webinar.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Julie Petty. I am the Goat Industry Development Officer with Meat and Livestock Australia, and today we've scheduled a webinar for approximately 1 hour. Today's webinar is talking about the various goat meat markets, opportunities, areas for development and promotion. We have two excellent guest speakers for today's webinar. They are Mr. Morgan Gronold, the Senior Trade and Investment Officer of Trade and Investment Queensland, who is going to be presenting some findings and information regarding an ongoing market research project that MLA has funded through producer levies. Following on from Mr. Gronold, Mr. Stephen Edwards, who is the Business Manager for Global Marketing of Meat and Livestock Australia, is providing an update on MLA marketing and promotion information for goat meat both internationally and domestically. Today's webinar has been funded also through your producer levies, and it's a free service for any producers wishing to dial in and listen to these kinds of updates. Today's webinar is one of a series of sessions that we'll be running, and we have some information available for upcoming sessions as well as those that have been held previously. Should you have any issues with your audio today, you will notice that you can either dial in and listen through your computer. Otherwise, you can dial in on your phone, and you should be able to see on the screen at the moment we have a phone number and an access code there should you wish to dial in over your phone. I should also mention that today's webinar is being recorded. All webinars as part of this series are being recorded, and the reason we're doing that is that the recordings will be uploaded to the Meat and Livestock Australia website following this session for people to view at a later date. You should have on your screen now a page there just showing where you can find these recordings, and you can see that the webinar, the last one we had, which was back in September, is available to download and listen to for free from the MLA website. And should you, as I mentioned, this webinar is part of a series, we do have another webinar coming up next month. And you'll notice that this one is scheduled for the 25th of November, Eastern Standard Daylight Savings Time, and it's focused around genetic improvement and parasite management. So if those topics are of interest to you, please make a note, and please feel free to dial in for that webinar as well. What we'll do now is we might move on to our first speaker. So as I mentioned, our first speaker is Mr. Morgan Gronold from Trade and Investment Queensland. At any point during the presentation, should you have any questions at all, you should notice on your computer that there is a control panel, usually situated on the right-hand side of the computer. You'll notice that there is a questions tab towards the bottom of that screen, and you should be able to expand that tab and then be able to type in some questions there for the speakers. What I'll be doing is I'll be looking at these questions as they're coming through, and at the conclusion of Morgan's presentation, I'll be asking, I suppose, the most common questions through to Morgan, depending how much time we have. If you have questions for either speaker at any time, you can pop those questions in there, and I'll be able to read that out to the presenter. The reason we're doing that is because all of the attendees are on mute, and that's purely just for the benefit of everyone else on the webinar, so that we're limiting the amount of background noise and so forth available to everyone else listening in. So, Morgan, are you there and ready to present? Morning, Morgan.
Yes, thank you, Julie.
Okay, you're not coming up as a panelist on my computer, so I can't share my screen with you to make you the presenter. So if it's all right with you, I will move through your slides from my computer.
Certainly, Julie, certainly.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, Morgan, if you would like to kick off, we're on slide 1. Can you see that clearly?
I can, thank you very much.
No worries.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Julie, and the MLA and GEICA for the opportunity to talk this morning about Australian goat meat export opportunities. I'll talk for about 20 minutes, so if there are any questions, as Julie said, please feel free to type them in and we can go from there. So, Julie, if we could go on to this next slide, please.
No problem.
Thank you. So I thought I'd just give a bit of an outline initially on my role and where I am, setting the scene, and that's the scene for Australian goat meat sort of exports. I'll delve in a little bit more detail into the Australian goat meat export project that I'm currently leading for GEICA and MLA at the moment. I'll also touch on China and the visit that we undertook to China earlier in 2014, which was part of that broader project. And also just look a little bit at some of the next steps or where we think or where I think there's some opportunity to go from here. So if we can go on to that next slide in regards to my role. So I'm based up in Western Queensland with the Queensland Government. I've been based up here since the mid-1990s and have been involved in the rangeland goat meat export industry for probably over 10 years. For those people from Queensland that may not be, and other states that aren't entirely aware who Trade and Investment Queensland is, Trade and Investment Queensland is the new export department for the State Government of Queensland, which has been in place for about 18 months. Before that, I was with the Department of Primary Industries, and so yes, I've had a passion for this part of the world and this industry for quite some time. If we move forward to this year, we went to China as part of this goat meat project to further investigate some opportunities and further identify some opportunities up there. And in recent years, we've hosted a number of inbound missions to Queensland. Obviously, as many people may or may not know, Queensland is home to Western meat exporters, which is one of Australia's largest goat meat processors, based down in Charleville. I'm based in Barcaldine in Western Queensland, so it's sort of reasonably close to me. So we often get a number of delegations coming in from places like Korea and other parts of the world that want to come in and see the facility and engage and talk and sort of look at some opportunities there. And I suppose, again, my role is around the export market and supply chain. So I know a lot of other departments and consultants and organisations do a lot of production work. Our focus tends to be more on enabling companies to sort of win export business and focus on that sort of export and customer end of things. So that's just sort of me. The next slide then. Thank you. So I'm not sure how much background those participating in the teleconference and webinar today have about the goat meat industry. So I just thought I'd set the scene a little bit. Many people may not realise that goat meat is the most widely consumed meat in the world. It has no religious taboos or connotations or barriers in that sort of regard, so that's a very, very good thing. And also, those 3 dot points towards the bottom, Australia is also the world leader in goat meat exports. Around 95% of what we process is exported, and our goat population is somewhere between sort of 4 and 6 million head, depending on the year and the survey processes. So, we really are in the box seat in regard to goat meat exports and the industry here in Australia. The next slide, then, we can talk a little bit more about the next phase. So what we'll see also, which is quite unique to the goat industry, is that around 95% of Australia's goat meat production is derived from rangeland goats. So you can see there on that slide, around 75% are on the eastern states, and around 20% are coming out of Western Australia. So again, if we look at, say, Western Queensland and where I am, all of those red dots are producers there. It is quite the place to be in Western and Southern Queensland and the Western Divisions of New South Wales for where goat meat production is derived from. So we've got a bit of a background there on Australia and where the rangeland production comes from. The next slide, please, Julie. And thank you to Stephen Edwards and a team from MLA for these slides. So what we can see is this continuation and increase of goat slaughter continuing at quite high levels. So you'll see pretty over the last sort of 20 years, it sort of slowly sort of crept along. Excuse me, but certainly we can see over the last 5 years, there's been significant growth from 2009 onwards, and with the projections of above sort of 2 million head for 2014. Now, if we go back and talk about the fact that, you know, we really have between 4 and 6 million head as the Australian population, you can see that the slaughter rates are growing quite rapidly. The next slide then, thank you, Julie, looks at goat meat production, and it too is on track to exceed last year's records. So, you know, we sort of, from about 2009, we sat around that sort of 25,000 tonnes, and it sort of slowly crept, but you can see easily this year for 13 and 14, we are seeing quite significant tonnages for goat meat production. So that's certainly where we're up to at the moment, quite record productions. The next slide will then look at a little bit more, again, just around the value. So if we look at that red line there, you can see the significant growth from about 2008, but equally, you know, from 2012, 13 and 14 have just been enormous years for goat meat exports, and we're pushing around that $160 million for the industry at the moment. So we can see it's had good growth, but exceptionally large growth over the last 2 or 3 years. The next slide we can just look a little bit at to where that goat meat as an export product goes, and we can see that the USA remains the largest market, and that's, you know, that's helped mature the goat meat market over the last sort of 10 years or so, and it consistently imports more product than anywhere else. We can see the other interesting thing that's come on quite recently, and that's obviously China with their just nearly 5,000 tonnes up there, and we're seeing that they have been quite a force to be reckoned with over the last few years. Then we've got places like Taiwan, Canada, Trinidad and Tobago, which have all been traditional importers of Australian goat meat. The next slide then puts a value on those, and again we can see, if I could have that next slide please, Julie, that yes, based on those graphs that we saw before, exports in 2013 were about $160 million, and we can see that again that the USA obviously takes a significant proportion of that, China as well, and then we see countries like Taiwan, Canada and the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago there. And so that's been a fairly standard pattern for the last sort of 8 or 10 years, with the exception being China, which has come on quite strongly over the last couple of years. So hopefully that gives everyone just a bit of background as to sort of where we're up to and what it means for the Australian sort of goat meat industry as a setting the scene. If we go to the next slide please, Julie, we can start delving a little bit deeper into the project that I'm currently leading at the moment. So it's called the Australian Goat Meat Export Project, and it's evolved from GEICA expressing an interest in growing and diversifying the export market destinations for Australian goat meat. And what we're trying to do there is provide an up-to-date picture of not just the risks, but also some of the volatilities and opportunities for Australian goat meat exports. So just to try and get a snapshot and a picture of what's happening right now in 2014 for Australian goat meat. And if we look to the next slide, this has come about largely because what we're trying to do is identify some key sensitivities of which the industry should be aware, and also try and identify, qualify and quantify these market opportunities within these export markets. And what we're saying there is not just current export markets that we've seen in those last couple of slides, but also some potential ones as well. So the idea is to try and get an apples versus apples idea of what these markets are. Now the markets that we're looking at, obviously we've seen some, the US, Taiwan, Korea, China. We're also looking at a couple of others there around the EU and India as potential markets for where goat meat could go into the future. And we think it's important to try and put a methodology across all of these markets to enable us to try and compare as best we can apples with apples about these things. So if we go into that next slide there, please, Julie, we can see the methodology that we've undertaken has been quite coordinated and quite dogged in to ensure that we get this information and that the information stacks up together. So the first thing obviously we undertook was significant desktop research of a range of reports both produced here and overseas on all of those markets to try and get a better understanding of what the data is out there is saying and what that information is relevant and what's about that. Now, we understood right from the beginning that having this information in a standalone format isn't the only option there, in that we needed to somehow qualify and better understand this desktop research, because we need, and to do that, we wanted to talk to the people in those markets that are currently undertaking that trade. So once we gathered this desktop research, and this project is about a 12-month project, we'll deliver this information in December. We started earlier in the year. So we quantified a large amount of desktop research on all of these markets, looking at opportunities for goat meat where we could, and red meat or ovine meat where we couldn't get into the specifics of goat meat. Because obviously goat meat is a very small part of the major meat sort of trade around the world. And so we wanted to delve in and drill in and we started that by interviewing the MLA regional managers across the world to understand and document and prioritise the gaps that we had in our data, and to get better sort of hands-on in-market information from those people there. And we've had great responses from those MLA staff across all of those markets. So once we were armed both with the desktop research and that MLA regional manager information, we went and then interviewed the goat meat exporters. So those exporters that were either processing and exporting or trading the meat currently out of Australia, to identify what their feedback was in regards to those markets, so that we could again qualify or ground truth some of this desktop information that we've got. But also too, we were interested in identifying the issues impacting on their ability to export, because at the end of the day what we're trying to do as well is enhance their competitiveness to allow them to export more goat meat from Australia. And so we've talked to about 80% and all the leading Australian goat meat exporters there in that regard. So I just wanted to put that slide in there to give people a bit of an idea about the sort of processes that we're going through in regards to that. If I could have the next slide, please, Julie. So one of the prominent things that people were interested in, and that everyone's interested in at the moment, not just around goat meat, but other meat products, and of course that's China. And so part of what we wanted to do with this project was to try and identify, qualify and quantify some of the market opportunities within this Chinese goat meat market, and just try and get a bit of a handle on what was happening over there. I mean, that's quite a difficult thing. A lot of the desktop data that we were getting from China is quite conflicting. One person says one thing, another says another. Some of the data that the government provides, you know, isn't provided in as well as say a country like Australia or ABS or ABARE or someone sort of provides. So we wanted to get over there and actually try and get around and get some feedback on what was happening. So we chose the Cial food show in China, which was on in Shanghai in about the second week of May this year. And we specifically chose that food show because with the emergence of China as quite a large powerhouse Australian meat customer over the last couple of years, this event already is quite a large event around the world and quite a focus for meat and other products. But it's, given what's happened over the last couple of years, the event has taken on a bit more of a greater significance. So we were very keen to get up there to try and see what was sort of happening. So if we look to that next slide, Julie, please. We can, and again, please, you know, this is, you know, a lot of you may know this information already, but you know, this is just a bit of background for everyone. So China has around 100 million plus meat goats. Now, if we cast our mind back to earlier in the presentation, I said that Australia has 4 to 6 million, and we are the world's largest exporter. So obviously, most of this product is consumed within China currently, and a lot of those are smaller operators. And the general culture holds there that Chinese medicine holds that goat meat is especially good in winter, and we're seeing that in a large amount of these Asian markets that it's used as a energy or as a positive meat during these cold winter months. And so what we're seeing generally around China is that there is significant demand and interest, but it is quite seasonal. It will run from sort of August till about January or February for that Chinese New Year, and predominantly it is whole carcasses, although there are some 6-weight cuts going up there. But so we're seeing some demand there, and with those photos, sorry, I should have mentioned a few of those photos as we're progressing. The one on the left is us standing outside one of the entrances for the convention centre there in Cial, and the one on the right-hand side is I'm on the right there with the blue shirt and the blue tie on, and Peter Schuster, who is part of the group that's doing the work with me, is there as well, and that's out the front of the True Aussie Goat program that MLA put together as part of their MLA stand over in Shanghai, which, look, was received really well. And I think congratulations certainly have to go to Geico and MLA for having goat as a standalone product there. You know, you can see further down behind me we've got the True Aussie Lamb and the True Aussie Beef, but to have True Aussie Goat standalone up there in China was a really positive thing, I think, for the industry. So if we go to that next slide, Julie, please. And this, look, this is a bit of a generalisation, but I just wanted to put it in there as sort of generally speaking to give people a bit of background. Look, eating goat meat is more popular in North and West China, largely because of its geographic location, because it's you know, a colder environment. So, you know, we tend to have longer winters, which sort of flows through to the consumption habits of people there. But also we're seeing this large ethnic, which is predominantly Muslim population, up across Mongolia, Sichuan, Tibet, etc. there in those provinces where obviously they can't eat pork, and so goat meat is much more a traditional sort of a product that they're interested in. And we're seeing the two photos there. The one on the left is just your typical, these are taken in Shanghai, just your typical sort of Chinese sort of takeaway shop. And then that's my finger there pointing to the number 14, and they did assure us that that was a goat meat product, but look, I couldn't confirm or deny that after that. But anyway, that's just sort of what we came across there. So if we look at that at the next slide, please, Julie. We started to try and tie together some of the market differentiation, I suppose, through those areas. And this information came from talking to people at Shanghai, also to Trade and Invest Queensland, as the export department for Queensland has a number of offices in China, and Li Chen, one of their officers based in Shanghai, was a great help to us, as well as were the MLA contacts up there, to try and just get a bit more of an idea on sort of what's happening. So if we look again at sort of this northern and western parts of China, the sort of feedback we got there, or the data that we got sort of firsthand, was, look, the products they're looking for are around a whole or a half carcass, these larger cuts. They cook them roast, broil, hot pot, boil, or sort of fry. They have a preference for both a skin-on and a skin-off product, which is interesting. Other parts of China prefer one over the other, but those guys tended to take sort of both. And again, they're closer to this all-year-round consumer, because obviously they can't eat pork, and also they have a much less humid sort of summer because it's a colder climate. So those, customers are one that tend to take it sort of all year round. The Inner Mongolia tended to want a whole carcass as well, and that tended to be, that data was a little bit harder to get, but that was when we started to sort of try and, that was the sort of reinforcement of sort of data that we got by speaking to people sort of up in and around there. The two photos you see there, the one on the right is the MLA stand as part of Sial, so there was a number of other beef and different producers there, as well as us there in regards to the goat meat and the goat meat exporters. A vast majority of Australia's goat meat exporters were in Sial for that week as well, to look for new customers and build on their relationships. And the one next to it is just another sort of hole-in-the-wall type breakfast option for us on our way to the show there. So just to give people a bit of a feel for those that haven't been up there. I'm no China expert, obviously, but just to give a bit of a feel for sort of how it happened there. So that's the north and northeast, west, and in Mongolia. If we go to the next slide, please, Julie, we'll look a little bit more at other parts there. So if we look at, say, the southeast, south and eastern China, we start to see a little bit more differentiation there in medium parts and diced meats. It's certainly the stir-fry and the simmer and the hot pots are still there. There is this preference in that southern areas of China and Hong Kong for skin-on, which is a bit of differentiation in the market. And again, because they're closer to the equator, it's more a tropical sort of environment. We're seeing that they tend to consume during winter only, because of these hot summer. They don't tend to consume in that sort of season. Now, equally, we've seen a couple of the smaller sort of hole-in-the-wall type eating places in the last couple of slides. That one, the bottom photo on the bottom left there, is obviously the financial district in Shanghai. There's, I can't remember how many now, 25 or 30 million people in Shanghai, and it's one of the most developed cities in the world. So just for those people, thinking China only looks like those earlier couple of slides, I can assure you it doesn't. There's certainly more lights there than there are in Barkie, where I am at the moment. And again, just another lunchtime sort of eating house there in Shanghai. So if we go to that next slide, Julie, that hopefully provides a bit of a snapshot, and it's really only a snapshot of what's happening in the China market and what's happening for us as what we're trying to do. And we're trying to provide information on not just China, but all of these opportunities, because I think their goat meat is, and this follows on to this next steps in these slides here now. So this project will be completed and delivered to MLA and GEICO in December of this year. We've got a number of recommendations there already in regards to where we think there is opportunity for people in the goat meat industry to learn a bit more about where their product's going and to get a bit better handle on some of these export markets. We've had great feedback from the MLA regional managers and the data in regards to opportunities in some of these markets that we weren't as aware of quite as much. And so I think, from my perspective anyway, look, I think there's a great future for the goat industry in regards to demand for red meat. Although we've seen significant exports and slaughter rates, as we saw earlier in those slides, I think that certainly from an export perspective there is significant interest there. And so I would certainly encourage more people to sort of get into goats. The more people that we have producing goats, the more product there is available, the more consistent and volumes we can provide overseas, and the more that we can continue to work with these markets. And I mean those last three slides there, the goats on the right are off a place about 150 kilometres northwest of me up here, and I mean they're ending up through the True Aussie Goat and other programs that MLA has provided in the main mall there in Shanghai, which is that centre focus there. And look, it's quite the product is quite well known there. They quite like eating it, and I think there's some great opportunities. But I think, and sorry Julie, we can go to that next slide please. I think we need to remember as well, just going back to that data, that the US continues to be and always has been a very strong market there. So I think what we're really trying to do is identify current and potential opportunities so that we can offer the best opportunities we can for producers in the goat meat sector. So look, there are my contact details there. Please give me a ring or an email if people would like more information, and that report will be ready at the end of the year. So thank you again, Julie, and everyone for the opportunity. I hope I've kept on time, and I'll hand back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morgan. Look, we've got some time now for questions. A number of people have sent a few questions in. If you did have a question for Morgan, please just go to the your control panel for the webinar, and you'll be able to see the questions tab there where you can type in your question for me to ask Morgan. So I think a number of the questions you've sort of potentially answered already, Morgan, and there's a couple that perhaps might be better directed towards yourself, Stephen. So there's one question around the True Aussie Goat logo. Is that available for exporters to use in any of their promotional material? And that's probably better directed to yourself, Stephen.
Yeah, it is, and I'm going to go through the True Aussie positioning, and then yes, how exporters can get on board with that.
Okay, great. Sorry, just working through some of the options. So there was a question around markets in the Middle East, talking about live or processed animals. Morgan, sorry, did you have any comments around the Middle East?
Look, thank you, Julie. Yes, we were pleasantly surprised with what the research and data is telling us about the Middle East. Traditionally, what's happened there, from our understanding and perspective, is that Australia wasn't at all competitive with animals, carcasses, or live animals going into that part of the world, simply because there is so many goats produced in North Africa that will basically, for want of a better word, be walked around through places like Oman and those sort of areas into the Middle East and Saudi Arabia. Now, what we're finding, and which we just couldn't compete on price in a nutshell, what we found, some of the data that we found, and some of this has been reinforced by MLA and other people up there, is that food security has grown and become quite a significant part of the conversation up there. We're seeing interest all of a sudden in places like Australia, because we can provide a quality and safe and consistent product. So the Middle East, maybe not all of a sudden, but I do believe that there may be opportunities for Australia for both live animals and also for chilled and frozen product, because we did hear also that I think it was, and I may get the countries wrong, but I'm sure we can get more detail there. But I think it was the UAE that actually banned livestock imports from Oman now because of their issues around food traceability and safety. Obviously, there's probably a bit of leakage there, but still, all of a sudden, there was supermarkets and the other governments in those countries starting to look around for a safer food alternative. The other competitor for Australian product into that part of the world is obviously mutton from India and meat from that part of the world. But as it gets more expensive, I believe, look, there will be opportunities for Australian goat meat into the Middle East, both as a live product and also as possibly a chilled or frozen product.
Thank you. There's another question here regarding the price comparison for sheep meat and goat meat in China. Is that something you were able to delve into at all, or?
Not really, is the short answer. It was very difficult. China especially was very difficult to get consistent data with. It was very hard to get data that talked specifically about goat meat compared to ovine meat. We have got some data there that I'll happily share with people that I didn't include in the presentation as about costings and those sort of things, but it really was just the best we could sort of get at the time. Goat meat remains, will continue to be quite price sensitive in regards to mutton and other meat products in China. It isn't seen necessarily as the sort of very high value, high end sort of product that that beef has in that market, and it will remain price sensitive. If for whatever reason mutton could get in there and significantly undercut goat meat, then that may cause us some issues. But I think I can try and provide some information on that, but it was quite difficult to get differentiation of price into those markets.
Could you comment around has there been any, in the research that you're doing, a preference towards the rangeland goat versus perhaps a boar-infused animal? Because obviously there's a potential there that the animals can look quite different, and also percentage of fat content, that type of thing.
Look, thank you. Look, at this stage, no. Generally, what the feedback we've gotten is that there isn't. I mean, we've got to understand too, in places like China, goat and mutton and sheep are all the sort of same word and the same language and words used. So it is quite hard to get differentiation between goats and sheep meat, let alone to try and then go further and differentiate between a rangeland or a boar or a boar cross animal. At this stage, that level of differentiation or that level of market development isn't there. That doesn't mean it won't get there. Depending on where people, if people feel that there's opportunity for a chilled product, into one of those markets in a more sort of high-end sort of restaurant sort of end. But look, at this stage, no, it's been purely about the carcass and whether the skin's on and what the specifications are, as opposed to saying that they want a percentage of boar or a percentage of fat or at that sort of level.
Okay. Thank you very much, Morgan. And I just had another question here regarding Trade and Investment Queensland funding options through that organisation for producers and processors. Is there any information about that? I think this is in relevance to your first overview about the organisation.
Certainly. Look, the short answer to that one is no as well. But look, if people have an interest, look, I'm certainly here. The Queensland government is quite supportive of the meat industry in Queensland. Goat meat is certainly a large part of that. If people have specific questions about projects that we can work on and those sort of things, please give me a ring or an email. But no, sorry, I don't have a pot of gold at the end of any rainbows. But look, if you have projects in mind or things that you're interested in, please give me a ring and we'll try our best to see if we can help you out or work together on something. I'd be more than happy to.
No problem. And there are a couple of other questions that we're seeing coming through here. So one is just in relation to demand into China, and I think this is in relation to, I suppose, different areas of China. some are seeing, I guess, more growth than others. Is that correct? And is there a reason for that?
Look, I think if we go back to right at one of those earlier slides, Julie, about how much product China's been taking over the last couple of years, there's also some data there from that AMEC have produced as well in regards to what markets are taking. What China's really only come onto the scene in the last couple of years. There is a bit of preference. You know, some people towards southern China prefer a skin-on product there. Most of what goes up there is in a carcass form. Some will be skin-on, some will be skin-off. At this stage, it really depends. There's so much interest and so much demand out of China. I think it really just depends on who's going to pay the most money and who has preference for where it goes. Obviously, not all Australian processors can produce the skin-on product and those sort of things. But look, there's also interest, obviously, in secondary products. You know, tripe and plucks and those sort of things up into that part of the world. So I don't know that you could definitely, say, or I wouldn't want to say it. I'm sure some of the exporters know more about it than I do about, southern China will only take skin on at this point of the year and northern China. But look, like what I said before, traditionally that sort of northern eastern China, north and west China have much larger Muslim populations, are looking for product and want it up there. So there is some parts of the country that will take it over others, but at this stage, I think people are still feeling their way into that market as to get a better handle of sort of who's where and whatever. The other thing to remember about China too is, it's not all things to all people. It is still quite seasonal demand. Part of the conversations that I'm sure all of the exporters are having with the Chinese market is to try and get some of the highs and lows out of their imports. What would be great to see in China is significant investment in cold store and that sort of stuff, so that they can buy product every month, rather than wanting huge amounts of product only for sort of 3 to 6 months of the year. So I think China's a fantastic opportunity for everyone in the world as well as us, but it remains only one market of many that people need to be aware of.
Okay. Thank you. Well, look, there are a number of other questions coming through, and what we might do, some of these perhaps are going to be addressed in Stephen's presentation next. So, Stephen, are you happy to begin your presentation, and did you want me to do the slides for you?
Well, if it's easy enough for you to hand over the controls, I can do that. But either way, you need to do it.
Yep. Okay, Stephen. So what we'll do is we'll hand over to Stephen Edwards now. So as I mentioned, Stephen is the business manager for global marketing with Meat and Livestock Australia. So he's going to give an overview of some of the MLA marketing and promotional activities for goat meat growth domestically and internationally. So for those of you who have submitted questions in relation to the domestic market, perhaps some of these are going to be addressed as part of Stephen's presentation. So Stephen, what I'll do is I'm handing over to you now and making you the presenter.
Thank you. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
I can see that. Beautiful. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks, Julie, for organising this and for inviting me along to speak. We'll go through some of the activities that we're currently doing in our markets, and as Morgan had put, some of those bigger markets like the US, the emerging markets like China, and the other more traditional markets also. So we'll go through, as I said, Southeast Asia, China, Middle East, Australia, and we'll go through Brand Australia, which is our true Aussie goat branding. So in Southeast Asia and China, obviously everyone, as Morgan was saying earlier, is saying that China is the big story these days, not only in goat but in beef and lamb as well. And it is the big story. However, we just need to again, like Morgan said, just remember that there are some pretty damn good markets out there, like the US, which is taking 15,500 tonnes, so quite a bit more than everybody else, and a pretty high value market. The other thing to remember too, it's a very stable market too. So obviously not many market access issues. We don't have any tariffs going in there. So let's just never forget that we've got those really good markets there, and they've always been there and they always will. So in Southeast Asia, as far as business development is concerned, because it's what we see as a developing and a growth market, we see that education is very, very important to end users, and by the term end users I'm meaning retail and food service. So raising the awareness of Australian goat throughout Southeast Asia and China, not only on the positive attributes of what Australia can offer as far as goat is concerned as an industry, but also just how to use the products. Teaching, even though that a lot of the goat that goes into these areas is carcass form, you're expecting these guys to break it down at some stage too. So if we teach them the right ways to break these carcasses down and use them, then hopefully we'll get better value out of those products as we move forward. And we'll go through a little bit earlier about the True Aussie Goat, but one of the things that we have developed is the True Aussie Goat product guide, which was taken up to Seattle for the first time. It's now been translated into simplified Chinese for distribution in mainland China and Hong Kong. Following up on what Morgan was talking about with trade shows, because it is a developing and growth market, trade shows are very, very important to get the message out about awareness of Australian products. And Chinese people are hungry for more knowledge about what they're eating. A lot of people worry about the food safety issues in China, and Chinese people worry about those. There's a lot of food safety issues happening in China with other proteins. So it's very important for us to educate them about how safe and how good our product is. Following on from Xiao, now I'm hopefully saying this right, Ningxia, which is in, I noticed in Western China, from Morgan's slideshow before, is happening around about now actually, and it's intended by the SA government and one goat exporter. So there's a presence on that booth with Australian goat, and these are the people that are obviously interested in buying goat, and majority of people up there are again Muslims, so the halal certification is very important to them. We also got the World of Food Beijing 2014 coming up in November, and that's attended by 4 goat exporters. So obviously there's a lot of interest from exporters in China as an export destination. Also promotional materials, as I showed you before, the True Aussie Goat positioning and marketing materials. We also got recipe cards developed that we're using there. It's been included in our social media promotions, recipes and events, and also they're developing a goat portal on Southeast Asia website, which will give a lot more information on the Australian goat industry. Middle East and North Africa, as Morgan said before, that there is opportunities there, of course, with product and also live. So Indian mutton is widely consumed in chilled form throughout Middle Eastern countries, and local slaughter of Indian and Pakistani goats widespread but rise in price points. So we've had existing goodwill and trust with the consumers due to lamb, mutton and beef. They like Australia as an importing country, and they like the way that we have those industry systems in place, which really no other country can do. So we're ahead of the game there, and retailers are willing to try Australian goat if supply can be guaranteed. Also on there is the live export by air freight opportunities evident for Australian goats, and that's coming from Jamie Ferguson, who is the current regional manager up there. If anyone is interested in these things, we can also refer back to those regional managers for more information and for any opportunities for your products. So again, business development, again, we see MENA as an emerging or developing and growth market. We're seeing this for all different species of products that we're supporting in the Middle East. There's, again, trade shows are very important to get the name out. Butcher training, we've got Chef Tarek up there, who's a master chef now, and he's a local guy. He's actually from Egypt, lives in Dubai now, where the office is. And Tarek is going around and educating local people or local chefs and butchers about the use of Australian goat, and doing an excellent job of it too. Obviously, he's a local, so he speaks the language. He's across the halal, so it just gives that little that boost, if you like, of authenticity about it. We're also doing some consumer sampling through supermarket chains where we're able to do that. Trade awareness, as I said, very important to get the trade across this, and the goat will be using goat as well as the beef and lamb on trade and consumer advertising. There'll be co-sponsorships of golf with Weber Barbecue. They do a lot of work with Weber Barbecues in the Middle East as partnerships. And again, Chef Tarek is a judge at some of the trade shows as far as that's concerned. And they do a men don't cook, they grill, which again is with the guys from Weber. With market access, obviously, as I said before, with China, halal is going to be a big issue in some areas. It's very important that we convey the message that Australian halal certification is a very, very sound and very good certification, and it's well trusted. In the Middle East, that certification is very well trusted, and obviously it extends to goat as well. There's also the team up there attend the Halal Symposium, the World Congress of Halal, and also develop and promote and present the Australian Production System Seminar at those events to just reinforce those halal certifications. North America, and I should have said first up, I'm in the marketing department here, but I spent 5 years in the North American office, getting back last year. So I guess I know a little bit more about this market than the others that we're speaking about. But trade shows, chefs in America are no different to chefs anywhere else in the world. They're hungry to learn and use new things. When you look at going back quite a few years, pork belly all of a sudden came to the fore, or lamb shanks, and goat is being seen as a quite a trendy kind of a meat to use over there, and we're trying to take advantage of that by using local chefs. And that image of the chef in that on that slide is Elizabeth Faulkner from New York, who uses Australian products and loves Australian products. She's been down there a couple of times and had a look around. And we're also promoting at retail food service shows as well. One is especially targeting Latino or Hispanic communities. Obviously, they have a predisposition to eating goat, so we're also trying to target them with the goat exporters in North America. We also have the website, and we have a very good goat site in conjunction with the beef and lamb site in North America that gives a lot of information about the goat industry, recipes, how to use, and also hopefully contacts for business development. Also doing a lot of recipe development. Again, similar, as I said, the three biggest markets in North America for Australian goat is the Hispanic market, it's the Muslim market in places like Michigan and Minnesota, but also a lot of that product that's going into the US goes into Miami and then goes in bond into the Bahamas, Caribbean islands, because obviously it's a huge consumed meat over there. So the recipe development has been around those ethnic regions, ethnic cuisines. And as you see here, there's a double smoked jerk. So jerk is a name, it's not a name of a person, it's a name of a cooking method they use in the Caribbean using a lot of different spices and chilies, which is prevalent right across. And also goat tacos, tacos being omnipresent in American cuisine. They're everywhere, and they've used lots of different things. And now, I mean, goat is the perfect product for it, as in a barbacoa. In Australia, and I know there's probably going to be a few questions about this. Firstly, let me say that there's been a restructure in MLA and a big restructure within the marketing team, and we've lost all of our state offices, and we're looking at the moment for a trade marketing manager. So at the moment, we are just looking to put back and how we move forward with marketing Australian goat to end users. Again, using end users term for food service and retail. And when we get a trade marketing manager, it will be a little bit easier to put that in place. We do have a chef and a butcher on hand at the moment who are doing some work, but just what has happened in the past, it's more about developing recipes and showcasing goat meat in contemporary dishes, education and awareness. Again, it's that education with chefs and butchers through paddock to plate tours that have been happening in the domestic market. In food service, it's about trade media. We've got quite a few articles up in the Rare Medium, which is an online and a printed resource for chefs. And this we're featuring goat in that as often as we possibly can too. Again, chefs being the trendy people that they are, like to use different products, and goat is one of those products they're playing with at the moment too. Retail, we do have obviously some retail support. The Australian Butchers Guild, which has been developed in the last year and has a great following with a lot of butchers. This program will carry on. Our technical butcher is carrying that on at the moment, and even though that we won't have state offices, this will be centrally run and still be able to have paddock to plate tours, and we'll be able to have goat promoted through the ABG as well. In retail, obviously, we're seeing some Coles supermarkets with the Thomas Farms brand range of goat products in there in New South Wales and Victoria. So that's it's good that the majors are starting to use some of the product. So Brand Australia, as Julie said earlier, and Morgan was alluding to, True Aussie Goat is a new branding globally that we're using. It's not only is it True Aussie Goat, but it's also True Aussie Beef, True Aussie Lamb. The reasons why we wanted to do this, we're using different markets using different logos for beef, lamb and goat, and we just thought we needed to have a consistent identity and a consistent position throughout all of our markets globally that tells the same story, has the same identity, same look and feel to any trade shows that we're doing, trade events, and also when we're talking to governments about market access. Excuse me. So it's developing a country of origin brand that provides an added value platform for Australian red meat in export markets. It's built around 3 core pillars, which I'll go through, and it's consistent engagement across all consumer activities, trade shows, brochures, and in consumer outreach as well. There's a plan to ensure local messaging is all local messaging will be transitioned to a True Aussie brand. Some regions will take this up a lot quicker than others. Some of the emerging or developing markets will probably implement them a lot quicker than some of the more established markets, simply because they need to transition logos that they have been using for a long time and are quite recognised. We note that consumers have a global outlook these days. It used to be years and years ago it was the Europeans that were flying everywhere and seeing everything. Then it was the Japanese and the Koreans, and now increasingly a lot of Chinese people are flying around and want to know where their products are coming from and what they taste like, and they want to try different cuisines. Some of our customers, our trade customers, are also developing global offerings. Not just the McDonald's of the world, but some of the retail chains of the world are developing those global offerings. And when you go to see a global company like, take Coca-Cola for instance, they have a consistent message and a consistent look and feel globally. and that's what we're trying to achieve here with True Aussie. So those three brand pillars that we talked about, the ideal home, we believe there's no better place on earth to raise beef, lamb and goat. They're trusted partners, they're maintaining the highest standards of food safety and quality control, and that goes through from the producers all the way through to processors and also chefs and the butchers that use our product globally as well. So it's trusting those partners, and in that becomes the industry systems, the underpinning elements of our products that we market so much overseas. And then it's down to the pure enjoyment, the healthy food from a friendly place. People are buying into that Australian psyche when they buy Australian products. So, and also obviously about the quality and the flavour of our products. So again, like I said, throughout the world, when we do trade shows now, we'll have a True Aussie presence. The show on the left is the NRA show, not the National Rifle Association, but the National Restaurant Association in Chicago, which is one of the biggest food service trade shows in the world. And recently, WOFEX in the Philippines also promoted Australian goat at their show over there. As I said, global consistency is what we're after, so everyone has got the same look and feel. We're using the same logos, and also consumer engagement, just so people know that this is an Australian brand and Australian product, and that it is safe. There's, as I showed you earlier, the Chinese version of the goat product guide. That sits with all our other product guides, the beef product guide, the lamb product guide, and it's a reference for end users. They're trade references for showing people about our industry, about our products, and how to use them as well. So as I said before, that the logo, the True Aussie Goat logo isn't on its own. It's the same logo with True Aussie Beef, True Aussie Lamb, True Aussie Goat. This has had extremely good acceptance in some of our markets already, and one of the markets which was surprising is Japan. Because of the True Aussie up there, the Aussie Beef logo up there, we felt that a lot of retailers would be slow to get on board, but 2 out of 3 of the largest retailers up there now have embraced the new look and feel, and we feel that we've got some really good traction. For those talking about the exporters using that logo, that can be done. We see that this is an umbrella brand, if you like, a brand of provenance of Australia, and company brands and commercial brands can sit under this. So yes, we are letting people use these logos, exporters. What we do want to do though is just control it. So we're licensing it and making sure that people understand that these logos need to be used on the products that they're talking about. And I'm not talking about exporters here. I'm talking about end users in places like China. Very difficult for MLA to police this, so we're asking the brand owners who are using it to ensure the integrity of the logo throughout the supply chain. So we all know that a lot of things get copied in China. We just want to make sure that we minimise that as far as we possibly can. Also, important point is that each region is going to be, even though the True Aussie Beef, Lamb and Goat logos are in English, we're going to have an added local language in there as well, and try and also incorporate those halal messages through it, just to tie it into some of the old logos and the old positionings. As I said earlier, a very important ingredient in all this is those company brands or commercial brands throughout goat and also the beef and lamb. And we feel that we really need to get a lot of the exporters on board with it. One of the things that I saw last year when I was in Europe was Uruguay do a very good job of this. Just about every carton of Uruguayan beef I saw had that Uruguayan brand positioning on it, and then a company brand under it. It just gave a really good look and feel, uniformity to everything, and a good provenance story. And that's what has been missing a little bit from our overseas work. So I think it's all coming together now. We do have about 10 exporters already signed up and using that logo. Some are using it in their brochures in different markets. Some are also looking at putting on their cartons to be sending overseas. So yes, a very important ingredient is those company brands, and happy to work through how it's used with companies as well and how we can help with that. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. Hopefully I stuck to that 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's all good. Thank you very much, Stephen. So we had a couple of questions coming through from people in the audience. So one of the questions was in relation to goat levies. So by comparison, does, you know, the amount of levies coming through for marketing and promotion for beef and lamb are significantly higher than goats. The question was around, you know, how are those used and whether there can be any cross, I guess, cross-funding. And my initial comment would be that goat levies are used for goat funds, but perhaps, Stephen, you might be able to expand on, you know, the opportunity for the goat industry is to leverage up and how we can, or the goat industry can, I suppose, tag along with these larger campaigns that perhaps are happening.
Yeah, and we do that a great deal. Yes, you're right. I mean, the beef and the lamb levies or the sheep meat levies are a lot more, and I think we get $250,000 globally for goat for marketing, and we do need to leverage up with those other guys. And you know, it's some markets their lead protein is beef. Some markets their lead protein is lamb. You know, Japan we leverage off the beef where we can. In America, we'll leverage off the lamb where we can, and that's through trade events. You know, obviously the lamb and the beef guys pay the majority of it, and we definitely make sure we get that goat in there. But we also ensure that the goat levies are only used for promoting goat and not other products. So same as we would for beef and lamb as well.
Yeah. Regarding development of, for example, the domestic market, obviously there are some activities happening in that area, and if people are interested in perhaps how they can get more involved in that, perhaps by, you know, hosting a paddock to plate tour, is there an opportunity for that? Is there funding available? How or who should they contact?
Yeah, good question. As I said earlier, and I think that is really good. I think it's really good to get those participants out there for those paddock plates, and I think they're really good events. As I said earlier, it's the trade marketing manager that will do that for the marketing, the domestic marketing team. That position is vacant at the moment. I think we should know something in the next couple of weeks as to who will be filling that, and then at that time, because what my role is, I really look after more of the international markets, and the regional manager for Australia has always handled the domestic side. Now that we don't have a regional manager for Australia or a trade marketing manager, I'm just waiting for that new person to come on, and then just remind them that they're also responsible for the domestic goat marketing, and go through what has happened in the past, what their funding is, and you know, what we also see moving forward as far as promoting goat in Australia. But yeah, look, happy for anyone to contact me, and I can help out as soon as I get some names and get that new person on board. Then we can have a look at how we develop those further.
No problem. Thank you. And so in terms of the development of the domestic market, how do you see that progressing? I mean, obviously that's going to be done in conjunction with this new person starting. Is there a feeling that there is, you know, there's a high value product or market for a high value product in the domestic market, and for something like a paddock to plate tour, would there be, is there funding available to assist with those kinds of activities, or is that all still in?
So what we've got is, I mean, the paddock to plates would normally be, we wouldn't be looking for funding from a producer on that. What we'd be looking for is just, you know, the chefs or butchers, whoever are coming out to be hosted by them, and we seek the chefs and the butchers to be paying for that. So, but on other marketing activities, we also have what is called the co-marketing fund, which used to be the old ICA. So we do have a number of goat co-marketing that we're helping goat supply chains at the moment by funding them and helping them with their marketing, whether it's developing websites, brochures, recipes, and also trying to show their products at trade events. Yes, we do that, and it's a 50% funding. Also, as I said earlier, we have a technical advisors on. We've got a full-time butcher and a full-time chef on too, and the chef has only been here with us for a few months, but is incredibly enthusiastic, really lovely guy, and I'm going to be talking to him also with the trade marketing manager and making sure that they can start to working on the goat side of things as well, maybe developing more recipes and working with supply chains. You know, like if there is a brand out there that wants to do a bit of value-adding work, and you know, what else can I do? Can I do different sausages? Can I do this or whatever? Then hopefully that resource is here for you to be able to use as well.
Excellent. And Stephen, did you want to give a quick overview of the Meat Cuts app?
I don't have that information at the moment. That was and Matt Dwyer in our team has done it. Matt's been overseas for the last month on holidays, and he returned back today, so I haven't been able to catch up with him.
Okay, so I should be able to forward around to the attendees following this webinar, but there is a Meat Cuts app that has been developed which has information on cuts for beef, sheep and goat. And my understanding is that it gives an overview of, you know, the different types of cuts, how you would be best to cook those, and then provide some recipe suggestions. So if anyone's interested in accessing that app, that's something we can forward around to attendees following the webinar. I just had a follow-on question, and perhaps this is more directed at you, Morgan, where some people are seeing a decline in the demand from mainland China for goat meat products for 2014. Did you have any comment around that as to why that might be happening, or get any inkling that something in the circumstances is changing when you were over there in Seattle in May?
So sorry, Julie, I just missed the first part of that question about 2014.
So the question is regarding this particular entity is seeing a decline in demand for goat meat products from mainland China for 2014. Orders very slow. Was there any comment around that, or why?
Oh, look, I think, and AMIC, Australian Meat Industry Council, have some data around who's demanding and what exports go where every month. I think if they're talking specifically around the early months of 2014 or earlier in the year, the feedback we're getting from China is that it is quite seasonal, and it really is only a 6-month demand at this stage. So most of the demand that we're seeing in the stats and when we're talking to exporters is coming on about July or August, and is usually finishing up by Christmas. It will go a little bit later this year because I think Chinese New Year is a little bit later. It's not until January or February. So I think they're probably quite right in the regards that we're not seeing the demand out of mainland China in, say, March, for example, because the demand just isn't there. Part of, I think, the next steps for customers in China, and I imagine all of the exporters and processors are doing this now, is to grow the understanding of both the customers over there that it's best to have consistent monthly export orders to ensure that they get the product that they want. That will obviously require some significant cold chain logistics up there, because if they really only want the product in September, their probably best option is to start buying that product is to buy every month and store it for that. Part of the feedback we're getting some of the exporters now is it's a bit frustrating working in China when the emails start in August and September, people wanting large volumes of product. We've already seen that the US and other markets who buy every month are already there, and then come sort of January or February, the phone from China stops ringing. So China is a fantastic opportunity, and I think Stephen, the work that Stephen and the MLA is doing up there is excellent. I think we just need to remember, though, that currently it is still quite seasonal, and I don't think we should, put all of our eggs in one basket in regard to China, because there still needs to be some growth and understanding from our perspective on, where and what that market wants.
Just, sorry, Steve, just on what Morgan said there too, just to add to that, we have seen a little slowing of exports of like beef and lamb going to China as well, and it's just there's a economic slowdown a little bit, which slows down a little bit on the exports, and as Morgan said, it is fairly seasonal too.
Okay. Look, thank you very much, both of you, both Morgan and Stephen, for your time today, and thank you to everyone else who's taken the time out of their day to listen into this webinar. What we might do is just another plug saying that following on from today's webinar, I will circulate a bit more follow-up information to people and send you a link to where the recordings for this webinar, as well as the one we held last month, where those can be found on the MLA website. I would also just like to say that we do have another webinar coming up on the 25th of November, and again, that's just in relation to some presentations around genetic improvement and parasite management. So if those are topics of interest to you, I'd encourage you to dial in and listen into that webinar as well. And without, I guess, any further delay, thank you very much again to everyone, and we'll terminate or end the webinar now, and hopefully see you all again next month. Thank you once again to everyone.
Thanks, Julie. Well done.